Ladies and gentlemen, each of us is born with purpose. Not one of us arrived here by accident, but purpose, no matter how great, remains unfulfilled without one crucial power, the power of decision. Life doesn't respond to our dreams, it responds to our decisions. Every step you take, every choice you make, becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of your destiny. Every decision you make is a seed that holds the potential of your future, a seed that doesn't look like much when you hold it, but it contains within it an entire forest. That's how powerful your decisions are. They may seem small, even invisible to others, but their consequences echo throughout your life, sometimes for generations. You don't see the full result of a decision when you make it, but time will always reveal what was planted. This is one of life's greatest truths. Decisions are never neutral. Every decision takes you somewhere. You either step closer to your purpose or further from it. Every yes is a path, every no is a gate, and every moment you hesitate is a delay in your destiny's unfolding. Nothing in your life just happens. Life is not an accident. It is a product of decision. When we understand this, we stop blaming fate, luck, or other people. We stop saying, "I wish my life were different," and start asking, "What am I choosing?" A poor man is not always poor because of a lack of resources. Often, it is a result of a lack of decisive, disciplined choices. A broken relationship is not just the result of bad chemistry. It is often a series of ignored decisions, delayed forgiveness, unspoken truths, or uncontrolled habits. Nations fall, marriages collapse, businesses fail, not by sudden storms, but by seeds of neglect planted in the soil of indecision or poor decisions. One wrong choice can unravel years of effort, but one right choice made in clarity and conviction can redeem years of damage. You may think that your decisions don't matter because you don't see immediate change. That's a lie the enemy whispers to keep you passive. Every decision is a seed, and seeds work in silence, underground, invisible. But they are working, they are growing roots. One day they break through the surface. One day everyone sees what you've been planting. That's why it's critical to take ownership of your decisions now, because eventually you will eat the fruit they produce. You cannot sow laziness and reap greatness. You cannot sow bitterness and expect peace. You cannot plant compromise and harvest honor. You were created with the power of choice. That's what separates you from animals, from trees, from machines. You were given a will, and your will is the most powerful tool you possess in shaping your future. That's why it must be trained. If your will is untrained, your decisions will be driven by emotion, impulse, or pressure. But when your will is governed by purpose, by discipline, by truth, your decisions become unstoppable forces of progress. And no force in the world can stop a man or woman who makes the right decision at the right time with the right heart. Some people wait for signs, others wait for miracles, but destiny doesn't wait. Destiny moves with decision. You don't need another prophecy. You need to choose. You don't need to hear another motivational speech. You need to decide. Your life is standing at a crossroads every single day, and the road you take is not chosen by life. It's chosen by you. You cannot control the world around you, but you can control your decisions within it. And when you do, you become a force of influence, not a victim of circumstance. There is no neutral ground in life. You are always sowing something, whether you know it or not. What kind of seeds are you planting today? Are you deciding based on pressure, fear, convenience? Or are you deciding with vision, values, and purpose? Because one day you will sit under the shade of the trees you planted, or suffer in the heat of what you failed to cultivate. It's never too late to start planting intentionally. It's never too late to start choosing differently. So if you want to change your life, don't wait for things to get better. Start with a better decision. Not a louder intention, not a longer prayer. A clearer decision, because destiny doesn't respond to emotion. It responds to direction, and direction comes from decision. Let the rest of the world drift. Let the noise surround you, but you choose, because in the soil of every decision lies the blueprint of your destiny. Take a moment and look at your life right now. your habits, your relationships, your finances, your emotional state, even the level of peace you carry in your soul. Everything you see is a direct result of the decisions you've made. You are not where you are by coincidence. You are where you are by consequence, good or bad, intentional or unconscious. Your last major decision brought you here. Most people want to believe that life happens to them, that the reason they are stuck is because of someone else, that the reason they are in pain is because life is unfair. But the truth is, life is shaped by decisions, not conditions. Conditions can be tough, yes. Circumstances can be cruel. But what separates the one who rises from the one who breaks is not what happened to them, but how they responded. And every response is a decision. You decided who you married. You decided what job you took. You decided whether you stayed or walked away. You decided whether to remain bitter or heal. You decided whether to learn or blame. No one forces you to stay where you are. Even indecision is a decision to remain the same. So if you want to change the direction of your life, you must first own the decisions that have shaped your current reality. Now, this doesn't mean you are to live in shame or regret. This is not about punishment, it's about power. Because if your decisions created your present, that means your future is still in your hands. That means you are not stuck unless you choose to be. That means you can make a new decision right now and begin shifting the entire course of your life. You are not powerless. You are not at the mercy of the past. You are a powerful being created with the authority to choose and create. But here's the challenge. Most of us are not fully conscious of how powerful our last decision was. One decision to stay silent when you should have spoken. One decision to walk away when you should have stayed. One decision to delay a dream. One decision to quit too early. That decision could have cost you years of progress. And it's not always the big decisions that do the damage. Sometimes it's the subtle ones, the ones we make on autopilot, the ones we make in fear, the ones we make to please people instead of honor purpose. Every major turning point in your life is tied to a decision you made or failed to make. That's how deep the principle runs. Decisions define direction, and direction defines destination. You cannot wish yourself into a new life. You cannot pray yourself into a new future while making decisions that contradict your prayer. You can't speak the language of success while making the decisions of a survivor. At some point, your choices must align with your calling. It is one thing to desire change, it is another to make the decisions that enforce it. That's where most people stop. They have dreams, they have vision, they even have talent, but their decisions don't match it. And when your decisions don't match your destiny, frustration becomes your companion. You start wondering why things aren't working. You begin to question your purpose. But the issue is not in your design. It is in your direction. And direction is always a product of decision. So what does that mean for you? It means you must evaluate not just your dreams, but your decisions. You must look closely at what you're choosing and ask yourself, does this decision honor where I'm going? Because every choice you make is a builder. Either it's building your future or breaking it down. Either it's opening doors or shutting them. Either it's empowering your destiny or sabotaging it. And the power to choose always remains with you. If you don't like where your life is, don't curse the journey. Check the last crossroads. Trace it back to the last time you said yes when you should have said no, or no when you should have said yes. Revisit that moment, not to stay there, but to understand the weight of your decisions. Because when you do, you take the wheel of your life back into your hands, and from that place anything is possible. Every time you make a decision, you are casting a vote, not in a ballot box, but in the direction of the future you say you want. That choice, that seemingly small moment of yes or no, is a declaration of the person you are becoming. It is a silent but powerful agreement with either your purpose or your compromise. Life is always asking the question, who do you want to become? And your decisions are the only answers that matter. You can speak greatness. You can declare destiny. You can even surround yourself with the best teachers and read the most inspiring books. But if your decisions contradict your desires, your future will follow your decisions, not your declarations. You cannot pray for freedom while choosing bondage. You cannot ask for peace while embracing chaos. You cannot seek purpose while deciding to settle. The universe, life, even God, all on a decision over emotion. We often underestimate how powerful small decisions are. It's not always the big, life-changing moments that define us. Sometimes it's the quiet choices, the ones no one sees, that build the strongest foundations or cause the deepest cracks. The decision to wake up early instead of sleeping in. The decision to forgive instead of holding a grudge. The decision to stay consistent when quitting feels easier. These daily decisions are votes. Votes cast not just for what we want, but for who we truly are. If you say you want to be healthy, every meal is a vote. If you say you want to be wise, every moment of study or distraction is a vote. If you say you want a strong family, every conversation, every sacrifice, every act of patience is a vote. And your destiny is not shaped in the loud announcements, but in the accumulation of quiet choices. Over time, your habits form, and your habits form your future. The most dangerous thing we can do is separate what we say from what we choose. That's how we deceive ourselves. That's how we wake up years later, realizing we've built a life that doesn't reflect our values. Because we said all the right things, but we voted for a different outcome. And no matter how gifted, talented, or called you are, the future you desire will only be unlocked through decisions that agree with that vision. Your decisions must match your confession. Too many people say they want change, but when decision time comes, they vote for comfort. They vote for fear. They vote for delay, and destiny cannot be bribed by words. It requires decisions. You can't change your life by inspiration alone. You must act. You must decide. And every time you do, you shift the ground beneath your feet. You take a step in the direction of the life you say you want. This is why it's not enough to admire successful people. You must study their decisions. Don't just be impressed by their result. Ask yourself, what did they consistently vote for? Because behind every visible success is 1,000 unseen decisions that created alignment. They said no to distractions. They said yes to discipline. They refused shortcuts and chose sacrifice, not once, but again and again. Their future didn't show up by magic. It arrived by decision. It's time to stop voting for a life you don't want. It's time to stop agreeing with things that drain you, limit you, or delay you. If your future matters, your decisions must begin to reflect it, because every decision you make is either opening the door to your potential or closing it shut. And the cost of ignoring this truth is too high: wasted years, missed opportunities, forgotten callings, not because you weren't gifted, but because you didn't vote with your life. So today, the power is in your hands. Not someday, not next year, today. The future is not something you wait for. It is something you decide into, and your next decision could be the one that tips the balance. Don't take it lightly. Every decision is a seed. Every seed has a harvest, and every harvest reveals what you truly voted for. The past cannot be altered. No matter how much you cry, regret, rewind, or wish, you cannot go back and relive 1 second. What's done is done. And for many people, this becomes a prison. They carry their past like chains around their ankles. They replay old failures, broken relationships, bad decisions, missed opportunities, and allow those memories to paralyze their progress. But here's a truth too many ignore. While you cannot change your past, you have full authority to redefine your future. Your past is not your prophecy. It is your history, not your destiny. And though the past may have shaped you, it does not have the power to define you, unless you let it. You see, life is not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to it, and response is a decision. You can either let the pain of your past become the reason you stop, or the reason you grow. You can let your mistakes bury you, or you can use them as bricks to build something greater. Many people are not stuck because of what happened. They are stuck because of how they have interpreted what happened. They have made a permanent identity out of a temporary moment. They keep naming themselves by their failures, defining themselves by their disappointments. But failure is not a name. It's an event. It's something you went through, not something you are. And the longer you attach your identity to the past, the harder it becomes to embrace the new future that is waiting to be born. The truth is, your future is not held hostage by your history. The door is not locked. The way forward is not blocked, but it requires a decision to let go, a decision to stop rehearsing the past like it's your future, a decision to stop letting what broke you become what leads you. Because if you keep following your scars, you'll never find your vision. You'll always be living backwards in a life that's meant to move forward. Redefining your future starts the moment you take responsibility, not for what happened, but for what happens next. The power to choose is the bridge from yesterday to tomorrow. You may not have been in control of what others did to you. You may not have chosen the pain, the betrayal, the failure, or the loss, but you are fully in control of what you do next. And that one decision, to take your power back, is the beginning of transformation. Some people wait for time to heal them, but time doesn't heal anything, only decisions do. Time without new choices only repeats old patterns. If you want to walk into a new season, you have to close the door on the old one. That doesn't mean you forget. It means you reframe, you use the lessons, but release the weight. You honor the growth, but reject the shame. And you rise not because the past changed, but because you did. You were not created to be a prisoner of what was. You were created to be a steward of what can be, and the future is always in the hands of the decisive. It does not open for the hesitant. It does not yield to the passive. It responds to the bold, the one who says, I cannot go back, but I will go forward. That is where power is born. That is where healing begins. Not when the pain disappears, but when purpose becomes greater than the memory of pain. You don't need a perfect past to have a powerful future. You just need to decide that your story isn't finished, that there's more ahead than what's behind, that your greatest contribution is not in what you've survived, but in what you choose to build now. And once you believe that, you'll begin to speak differently, walk differently, decide differently. You may not be able to erase the pages behind you, but you can pick up the pen today and start writing a different ending. You can decide right now that the rest of your life will not be ruled by the worst of your life. You can choose a new chapter. You can walk out of the shadows and into clarity, not because your past is gone, but because your decision to rise is stronger than your reason to stay down. There is a quiet killer that many never see coming. It doesn't shout, it doesn't break doors, it doesn't destroy with noise. It works in silence. It shows up in delays, in hesitation, in the phrases, I'm not ready yet, or let me think about it a little longer. That killer is indecision. And make no mistake, indecision is a decision, and it is always a decision to fail. Indecision looks harmless at first. It disguises itself as wisdom, patience, even humility, but behind the mask is fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of responsibility. And as long as you allow indecision to lead, you will live in a cycle of wasted potential. Doors will close, seasons will pass, opportunities will dry up. Not because you didn't have what it takes, but because you refuse to choose. You cannot walk into your future with a double mind. You cannot enter destiny with one foot in and one foot out. Life does not reward the hesitant. It rewards the decisive. Those who wait too long lose too much, because time doesn't wait for clarity. The river of purpose keeps flowing, and if you don't decide to jump in, you will be left on the shore watching others live the life you only imagine. Some people spend years circling the same mountain, not because they're weak, but because they won't choose. They say they're praying, but they're hiding behind prayer. They say they're preparing, but they're hiding behind perfection. They think they're being careful, but they're simply afraid. There is a point where wisdom turns into stagnation. There is a point where caution becomes a cage. And the longer you remain undecided, the deeper the roots of fear grow in your soul. You were not created to live in limbo. You were not designed to float between maybes. The human spirit was built for conviction, for courage, for clarity. Every great leader, every builder, every visionary became what they were because they dared to decide. Not because they were always right, but because they refused to stay stuck. Progress doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with movement, and movement always starts with a choice. The tragedy of indecision is not just what you lose, it's who you never become. The book's never written, the businesses never launched, the healing never pursued, the love never given, the ideas that died in notebooks. Not because you weren't called, but because you couldn't commit. You can't become what you don't decide to pursue. You can't grow in what you won't plant, and you can't lead what you're afraid to start. The uncomfortable truth is this: not choosing is a choice, and that choice has consequences. Life keeps moving whether you participate or not. The world doesn't pause until you figure it out. The windows of opportunity don't stay open forever. Every season has a purpose, and every purpose has a window. And when you let indecision rob you of the moment, you risk losing something you may never get back in the same form. This doesn't mean you must rush. It doesn't mean you should leap without thought. But there's a difference between wise preparation and fearful paralysis. Wisdom studies, decides, and acts. Fear studies, questions, waits, hesitates, and eventually loses. Don't let indecision disguise itself as maturity. Maturity doesn't avoid decisions. It owns them, and then it accepts the outcomes, learns from them, and grows. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs in your life will only come after the decision is made. You don't get the miracle on this side of the choice. You get the miracle on the other side of commitment. The water doesn't part until your foot touches it. The provision doesn't show up until the journey begins. You're waiting on signs, and life is waiting on your decision. The shift is in your choice. The change is in your yes. The power is in your obedience to the vision you've already received. So don't let indecision write your story. Don't hand your future to hesitation. Make the move, make the call, write the email, register the name, end the cycle, begin the process. Take the risk, because failure is not always falling. It is often found in never choosing at all. There is a quiet killer that many never see coming. It doesn't shout. It doesn't break doors. It doesn't destroy with noise. It works in silence. It shows up in delays, in hesitation, in the phrases, "I'm not ready yet," or "let me think about it a little longer." That killer is indecision. And make no mistake, indecision is a decision, and it is always a decision to fail. Indecision looks harmless at first. It disguises itself as wisdom, patience, even humility. But behind the mask is fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of responsibility. And as long as you allow indecision to lead, you will live in a cycle of wasted potential. Doors will close, seasons will pass, opportunities will dry up. Not because you didn't have what it takes, but because you refuse to choose. You cannot walk into your future with a double mind. You cannot enter destiny with one foot in and one foot out. Life does not reward the hesitant. It rewards the decisive. Those who wait too long lose too much, because time doesn't wait for clarity. The river of purpose keeps flowing, and if you don't decide to jump in, you will be left on the shore watching others live the life you only imagined. Some people spend years circling the same mountain, not because they're weak, but because they won't choose. They say they're praying, but they're hiding behind prayer. They say they're preparing, but they're hiding behind perfection. They think they're being careful, but they're simply afraid. There is a point where wisdom turns into stagnation. There is a point where caution becomes a cage, and the longer you remain undecided, the deeper the roots of fear grow in your soul. You were not created to live in limbo. You were not designed to float between maybes. The human spirit was built for conviction, for courage, for clarity. Every great leader, every builder, every visionary became what they were because they dared to decide. Not because they were always right, but because they refused to stay stuck. Progress doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with movement, and movement always starts with a choice. The tragedy of indecision is not just what you lose, it's who you never become. The book's never written, the businesses never launched, the healing never pursued, the love never given, the ideas that died in notebooks, not because you weren't called, but because you couldn't commit. You can't become what you don't decide to pursue, you can't grow in what you won't plant, and you can't lead what you're afraid to start. The uncomfortable truth is this: Not choosing is a choice, and that choice has consequences. Life keeps moving whether you participate or not. The world doesn't pause until you figure it out. The windows of opportunity don't stay open forever. Every season has a purpose, and every purpose has a window. And when you let indecision rob you of the moment, you risk losing something you may never get back in the same form. This doesn't mean you must rush. It doesn't mean you should leap without thought. But there's a difference between wise preparation and fearful paralysis. Wisdom studies, decides, and acts. Fear studies, questions, waits, hesitates, and eventually loses. Don't let indecision disguise itself as maturity. Maturity doesn't avoid decisions. It owns them, and then it accepts the outcomes, learns from them, and grows. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs in your life will only come after the decision is made. You don't get the miracle on this side of the choice. You get the miracle on the other side of commitment. The water doesn't part until your foot touches it. The provision doesn't show up until the journey begins. You're waiting on signs, and life is waiting on your decision. The shift is in your choice. The change is in your yes. The power is in your obedience to the vision you've already received. So don't let indecision write your story. Don't hand your future to hesitation. Make the move, make the call, write the email, register the name, end the cycle, begin the process, take the risk. Because failure is not always falling, it is often found in never choosing at all. When you make a decision, you may think it's just about you, but it's not. Every decision you make creates a ripple. Like a stone dropped in a still lake, the effects of your choices travel far beyond what your eyes can see. One moment of courage or compromise in your life can echo into the lives of your children's children, and generations you'll never meet. You are not just choosing for yourself, you are choosing for your legacy. Some people live as if their life ends with them. They make decisions without thought for the future. They spend what they want, say what they want, do what they feel, and wonder why their family suffers. But the truth is, your decisions are not contained within the moment. They are seeds that will either bless or burden those who come after you. What you choose today becomes the culture your family inherits. It becomes the standard your children accept. It becomes the ceiling they either break through or stay under. You are a blueprint. Someone is watching you even if they never tell you. They're watching how you carry pressure. They're watching how you respond to failure. They're watching whether you give up or get up. They're watching how you handle temptation, how you deal with disappointment, how you fight for what matters. And every time you make a choice, you're sending them a message. This is what's possible. This is what's acceptable. This is how we live. Some of us are living with the consequences of decisions our parents made, and their parents before them. Cycles of poverty, addiction, silence, fear. These didn't start with us. They were passed down like inheritance. Not because anyone asked for them, but because someone refused to confront them. And yet, in the same way that generational pain can be passed down, so can generational power. A single decision can break the chain. One decision to walk in integrity. One decision to love differently. One decision to seek healing. One decision to educate yourself, to raise your standards, to protect your values. It can shift the entire bloodline. You may not come from wealth. You may not come from a healthy home. You may not come from education or privilege, but you can start something new. You can be the first in your family to choose differently. And that decision will speak long after you're gone. Your grandchildren may never know your name, but they will live inside the shelter of your courage. You have to understand that purpose is not personal. It is generational. Your gifts were not just given for your survival. They were given to build something lasting. The decisions you make must reflect that level of responsibility. You can no longer afford to live casually. Your decisions must be intentional. You must think like a builder. A builder doesn't just lay bricks. They envision the generations who will live in what they construct. When you choose discipline, you're building. When you choose wisdom over impulse, you're building. When you choose sacrifice over selfishness, you're building. When you choose vision over convenience, you are placing foundations deep in the ground. And though no one may praise you today, one day generations will walk through the doors you opened. They will drink from wells you dug. They will benefit from battles you fought in silence. This is why it's dangerous to believe your life is small. There is no such thing as a small life. You carry too much influence to be careless. You are too important to this world to waste your choices. Every decision you make becomes a building block in the future you may never see, but are still responsible for. And that should sober you, that should humble you, but most of all, it should empower you. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be intentional. You don't have to know everything. You just have to be willing to decide with wisdom, with conviction, and with legacy in mind. You were not born to pass through time unnoticed. You were born to shift things. You were born to break curses. You were born to build altars. You were born to change the narrative for those coming behind you. And it all begins, not with money, not with fame, but with a decision. You were not born by accident. You were not created to exist without direction. There is a purpose inside you that was designed before time even began. Your life carries meaning, and your presence on this earth is evidence that something is assigned to you. But no matter how divine that purpose is, it will remain dormant without your decision to activate it. Purpose doesn't chase you down. It waits for your agreement. It requires your partnership. So many people live with unfulfilled potential, not because they weren't called, but because they never chose to answer. Heaven can declare your destiny. The Creator can assign your calling. But until you say yes, until you align your choices with that calling, nothing will manifest. The power of your future is hidden in your obedience. And obedience is not a feeling, it's a decision. You must understand that life does not reward possibility. It rewards action. You can be full of ideas, full of revelation, full of vision, and still live empty, broken, frustrated, and bitter. Why? Because nothing moves until you choose. The world is filled with people who had potential but never produced fruit, not because they lacked purpose, but because they failed to partner with it through decisive living. Purpose without decision is just potential, and potential alone is useless. Potential doesn't feed families. Potential doesn't write books. Potential doesn't start businesses or shift nations. It is only what could be, but never will be, until a human being decides to align with it. Every purpose must be activated by a clear, costly, courageous choice. And until that choice is made, you will live in the pain of knowing there is more in you, but never seeing it come to life. It's not enough to feel called. It's not enough to dream big. You must do more than dream. You must decide, because purpose will demand that you walk away from comfort. It will require you to say no to what is easy and yes to what is eternal. And that is where most people freeze. They like the idea of purpose, but they avoid the responsibility that comes with it. But purpose is not romantic. It's weighty. It requires commitment. It costs time, relationships, money, energy, and pride. It will strip you of excuses and invite you into accountability. There is no such thing as accidental greatness. Every great life was the result of hard, holy, sometimes heartbreaking decisions. Every world changer, every reformer, every visionary stood at a crossroads where they had to choose between what was convenient and what was called. And the moment they chose calling, heaven moved, because purpose is activated when the will of man says yes to the plan of God. You are not waiting on a sign. You are not waiting on more confirmation. You are not even waiting on more time. Time is waiting on you. Heaven is waiting on you. The earth is groaning, waiting for the manifestation of sons and daughters who will decide to be who they were created to be. Not halfway, not with 1 foot in and 1 foot out, but with full surrender, full decision, full alignment. There are doors that will never open until you decide to walk toward them. There are gifts in you that will never come alive until you place a demand on them through action. There are people assigned to your voice, to your story, to your presence, and they will never be reached if you don't choose to step into your purpose. That's how serious your decision is. Your indecision doesn't just delay your life, it delays the healing of others. You're not just responsible for your gifts, you're responsible for the impact they were meant to make. Your Creator will not force you. You were given the gift of free will, not so you could wander, but so you could partner with purpose on purpose. And once you decide, once you agree, once you move, what was invisible becomes visible, what was uncertain becomes clear, what was locked begins to open, because purpose responds to commitment, it bows to discipline, it aligns with clarity. And clarity comes when you decide to stop playing with your potential and start walking in your assignment. Ladies and gentlemen, it all comes down to one timeless truth. Your destiny is not written in the stars, but in the choices you make each and every day. The seeds you plant with your decisions will determine the harvest of your life. Will you choose fear or faith? Will you choose comfort or courage? Will you decide to drift with the tide or steer your own course? Today, you stand at the crossroads of possibility and purpose. Decide to live with intention. Decide to honor your calling. Decide to become the person you were born to be. Because in that single decisive moment, you ignite the power to shape not only your future, but the future of every life you touch. Step forward, make your choice, and watch as your destiny unfolds in ways more magnificent than you ever imagined.